Yeah, welcome guys to the Zwift Power Up Cycling Podcast. I'm Matt Rowe here with Kev Poulton.
Good to be back.
Top man. And of course, drum roll, also joining us is Dr. Greg Henderson. What do you know, Doc?
What's up, Doc? Yeah, I wouldn't go quite that far, but welcome back. I'm stoked to be here, and let's get into it.
Awesome. To kick off, what do you think about Power Ups?
It's interesting, we had that Kiwi crew ride that Greipel turned up to, and he won the sprint without a power-up, and he didn't even know. He goes, what are you talking about? What's a power-up? And he had to work out what a power-up was himself.
Didn't know what a Power Up was.
Nah, didn't use it in the sprint. I said, mate, if you use that in the sprint, that's why the guys were close to you in the sprint, because you weren't using a power-up, and they were.
Nightmare. And you know, as an event organizer in Zwift, so for those people who do organize events, you get the choice of turning power-ups on or off. So what's your take on power-ups? Should they be allowed, or are they a good thing or a bad thing for the game?
No, they're definitely a good thing, because that brings the gaming part into it. It brings the fun into it. So, we are playing games in some ways, and it is this virtual world, and why not add some gamification to it?
I agree. And obviously recently the aero power-up has reduced in terms of its benefit, giving you it's gone from giving you a 30-second aero boost to now half that at 15 seconds, so kind of in line with Feather. I know there's a few posts online about it, but previously I guess the aero power-up was critical to being able to be competitive. So no aero, you're basically fighting for the scraps. And then when the news came out, Jordan Rapp told us all that it was a trial. Now I don't know what will happen long term. But yeah, certainly I think the shortened aero power-up has changed people's views on power-ups and how they use them. Certainly power-ups in general are kind of more balanced now, and people are less desperate for that aero, the aero helmet, because the truck can now be arguably the most beneficial power-up, but I mean that's the only one now that's 30 seconds long.
But it is good that race organisers can turn the power-ups on and off, because that way, if they want to run a traditional cycling race, as it is, then they can run it that way. That's great. But if they want to add some fun to it and some tactics, because we know that it is hard to employ tactics in Zwift racing. Yeah, and this adds that element to it. And when we did the KISS racing, a lot of the riders there were talking about their strategy and when to use it, when not to use it, and so on. So it just brings another element into racing online.
Yeah, I completely agree. And obviously on the road, you've got wind direction, you've got steering. So I guess it's in a way, this is Zwift's way to add that kind of that dynamic element.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know with going back on the reduction in aero power-up duration, I think you used to be able to be a little bit blasé about when you would activate that power-up. So as the full gas part of the sprint is generally less than 30 seconds. If you've activated with 400 meters to go, you're going to have the power up all the way to the finish line. But now you need to wait longer. You're not going to do 400 meters in 15 seconds. So you've got to be a bit more calculated, and you need to try and activate that power up almost while you're sprinting full gas. You need to take your hands off the bars to be able to press that button. So it's just, I think it's a nice differentiator. It just makes you think, brings a bit more strategy into it. So, I think we'll agree in power-ups are a good thing, and I guess the reduced length of the aero one is a good thing too.
Yep.
All right, well, this podcast, we've got an interview with Jolien D'Hoore, who currently rides for the UCI Women's Pro Tour team, Bowles Dolmans. Jolien is a 29-time national track champion, as well as being a 4-time national road champion. So quick maths, that's 33 Belgian national titles. Pretty impressive. She's also won World Championship titles and European. And I caught up with Jolien in Swansea, which is a city in my home country of Wales, during the Women's Tour, which is one of the most prestigious races in the world for women. Here's my chat with Jolien. So Jolien, I know how valuable evenings are for recovery on a stage race, so thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
We're sat in a hotel after stage 5 of the Women's Tour here in the UK, and you've won 2 stages. Pretty successful so far?
Yeah, I can say pretty successful. I won the first stage and the third stage. A bit unexpected, actually. But it was 2 times a bunch sprint. And the team did a perfect lead out. So all I had to do was just finishing it off, and I did it.
You say all you have to do, and as sprinters often do, underplay their role. Let's just talk about kind of the final of coming into a sprint. It's not for everyone. It gets tense, and you're fighting for position and all that. How does your mind change in like the final 10K or something of a race?
Yeah, well, it's all about focus and concentration, and you really need to be in the zone. And it's also a lot of based on trust. So you have to trust your teammates.
Yeah.
And I have 100% trust in them, and I just follow the wheels, and they always put me in the perfect position. So actually, I have the easy job, and they have the hard job.
That's nice. And today was a hilly stage. I know some of the roads, and again, I appreciate how hilly it was. So going into today, you weren't expecting a personal result?
No, not really. We have 2 riders going for GC. That's Amy Peters and Christine Majerus.
Yeah.
And Amy, she did a really good job today, and Christine as well, actually. And Amy is now 3rd in GC. So for the team, it's really good. But personally, for me, today was a really hard day. It was the whole day up and down, and tough climbs, and very steep as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of sheep as well.
Yeah, you're in Wales now. Your role there, you go from leader on a stage to being domestique.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I love to do, The girls work so hard for me the first 3 days, and I want to pay them back.
Yeah.
So I want to help them for their own personal goals. So yeah, I'm happy to pay them back, actually.
Nice. And transfers after the stage, people kind of don't realize, you're traveling all around the country. That's hard work.
Yeah, that's really hard work. Like yesterday, we had the longest stage. We had 160K or 165, I don't know. And then we had a 2 hours and a half transfer after the race. So also with the traffic here in the UK, it was it was a hard day yesterday. And but yeah, we're used to do it.
And what were you doing in those transfers? I guess it's just get in the vehicle as quick as you can.
Yeah.
Food.
Yeah,
chill.
just eating.
Yeah.
Eating all the time. So I don't mind, actually. Yeah. So we have to eat, we have to recover, legs up. Yeah. And think of something else, like
Switch off a bit.
Switch off and relax. Yeah.
And do you have a bus, your team?
Yeah, we have
you
a bus.
On the bus.
So yeah, that's really useful. After the stage, we can have a shower. So it's really easy, actually.
Yeah, that's good. And just talk a little bit about the start of your career. I read something on the Balls website about you going to Junior Worlds 2008 in Cape Town. That was a really funny insight.
Yeah, true. So my goal in Cape Town was actually the track. That was my main goal, but I achieved a bronze medal there, so I wasn't really happy. And the week after was the road race, and I was still there, and they were asking me, do you want to do the road race? We still have 1 spot left. I said, yeah, why not? I'm here, so better can race. So I started, and it ended up being a bunch sprint. So I started actually with leg warmers and arm warmers and everything on. And then the second last lap, I took off everything, like my arm warmers and stuff. And then I sprinted and I won. So it was unbelievable. Yeah. And they couldn't believe it at home. So I called my mom, and she was really like, what did you do? And
yeah. Amazing. That's so cool. And back then, as a junior, training-wise, we weren't training seriously.
No, not at all. I was doing like different kind of sports. I was into athletics, football, like everything. And I just rode my bike, I think, once a week, maybe for an hour or something.
Amazing.
And that was it. And on Sunday, I raced my bike. So yeah, it was more a hobby, and it was more for fun. And I really enjoyed it. And it also gave me some results.
Yeah. And was that kind of a key moment when you thought, I can do this as a career?
Yeah, I was thinking then maybe I have some talent to ride a bike. You never know. But still, you're 18 years old, so everything still has to begin. Yep. I also went to university, so I did the combination cycling and university, which was really hard, but it was doable. So I went to the Olympics in London while I was going to university.
That's fascinating, because you see loads of kids from a really young age, like they want to be pro, and they dedicate everything to it. Their social lives, their sacrifice, their education, all for cycling. And for 99% of them, it doesn't work out. So you've gone to the Olympics. Were you 5th in the Omnium?
Yeah,
the Olympics,
5th.
Fifth, while doing a degree.
Yeah.
That must have been hard, all the juggling of all the training.
Yeah, at that time I was not even a professional athlete. So I was competing against girls like Laura Kenny, who was professional. And mentally it's also hard, because you're thinking like, maybe I could have achieved more when I had my rest and when I didn't have to study. But then, I'm really proud that I've done it. And then when I got, I think 24, 25, I really turned professional. Yeah. So then the results started coming as well.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And Coming back on, obviously you've got a lot of talent, natural talent. How much of being a pro is nurture versus nature? So how much are you born with?
I'm really convinced that like you're born as a climber or as a sprinter.
Okay.
That I'm really convinced in. But like everybody has to train, everybody has like to take care of herself. So it's not only about talent, it's also what you do with it, and how you nurture it.
Yeah, interesting. And track and road, obviously you've balanced the two throughout your career. Which do you prefer?
Yeah, that's a hard
question,
one.
yeah.
That's a big question. Yeah.
Depends which you're going well on.
Yeah, true. Honestly, I like the combination of track and road. It's also good for the head to do something else. After a full winter of track, I'm actually sick of it, and then I'm looking forward to the spring classics on the road at home. And then at the end of the road season, I'm looking forward to go to the first World Cup. So.
And how do you segment your season up? Because it's obviously very hard to perform at the highest level on both. You need to kind of say, right, I'm going to sacrifice the first or the winter or spring to track and then transfer to the road. How do you manage that?
Yeah, normally I take a break in May, so after the spring. But now I broke my collarbone in the spring, so I had to continue training. So I didn't have a break yet so far. But then there's another break, should be in November, December. Depends on my track program. So it depends also about the schedule a bit.
Yeah, sure. And obviously when you broke your collarbone, you, as part of your rehab and that, you spent a bit of time on Zwift training?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on Zwift actually. It's very useful. And when I broke my collarbone, that's all I could do, riding the rollers or the ergo, and then you use Zwift, and I really liked it.
Yeah, cool. Which is on Zwift now, which is your favourite map? Would you say, or favourite route? Have you got a favourite?
Most of the time I do Richmond.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Did you do the Richmond Worlds?
Yeah, I did it. Yeah.
A bit of an affinity there then.
Yeah, and it's also cool to see the similarities between the real course that I did and the Zwift one, and it's like 100% the same.
Yeah,
so it's really cool.
That's cool. Yeah. And back on the track. So London, you were studying, got 5th place in the Omnium. Then 2016, got your bronze medal. Would you say that's the highlight of your career?
I think so. It's not a gold medal, but it's a medal. Yeah, it's an Olympic medal, and it was a big thing in Belgium as well, because track cycling is not so popular. Also, women's cycling is not really popular in Belgium. So me getting a bronze medal was really big news, and I really enjoyed it, and I think that's my biggest highlight so far. Yeah,
where is your medal? Not that I'm going to come and steal it, but just where do you keep it?
Actually,
somewhere safe, or is it?
It's in a box somewhere in the attic. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, it's not. No. Yeah, I'm not a material person.
Right.
I'm not having anything at home like trophies or medals or like nothing.
Memories.
Yeah, memories.
Yeah, memories. That's all
that's
you need.
It. Yeah.
You just mentioned women's cycling. Cycling in general is quite a male-dominated sport, and in the UK, there's certainly been an upward trend of more and more females getting into the sport. Is that the same in Belgium, do you think?
No, it's quite a big difference, and now I see it this week as well in the women's tour. Women's cycling in the UK is pretty big, and it's not in Belgium.
Right.
They're really they're sticking to the men's cycling, and they're really old school still. So I can see the difference.
Yeah, but I think it's nice to kind of see, participation. There's more women riding bikes, and the women's tour, the crowds are getting bigger. Because with Danny, I've been to the women's tour for the last 5 years. And from 5 years ago to today, much more people watching now on television, and the crowds, even in the wet weather.
I think it also helps that they've had a lot of great female athletes in women's cycling, like Danny, like Laura Kenny, Victoria Pendleton. So it really helps, I think, for the people. We don't have it that much in Belgium, so...
I guess you've got great female athletes, but you've got an abundance of great male athletes as well.
Yeah, that's the thing, and the difference between the men and the women is big, and they're way more popular than us.
Yeah, sure. But I guess the professionalism of the women's pro cycling, it's definitely getting more professional, right? More strength and depth in the teams. Yeah,
true. It's getting bigger and bigger each year. And after every winter, I think, now I'm better than the year before. But then everybody's getting better. And everybody's riding faster and faster. And it's incredible. And even if you look at the races we do this week, the stages are very long. And it looks more like men's cycling. Like there's a breakaway and we give them 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they close it in the final, and then the party can start.
Yeah, exactly.
So it looks more like men's cycling now.
Yeah. Do you think that's a good thing, looking more like men's cycling? I look at it, I think it doesn't always need to be.
No, women's cycling doesn't have to be the same as men's cycling. No. I think we're a sport on our own. So we should create our own races, and I think it's better to have shorter races and then more action from the gun.
Yeah.
than the longer stages or longer races.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, looking at some of the men's races, there's not many men's races you'd watch from start to finish. And in the middle, there's just a block of hours where
it's just boring.
You're waiting, aren't you?
And also for us this week, sometimes it was just boring in the stage when you're not in a breakaway and you're in the bunch, and it's like, okay, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Maybe pit stop.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
See what food's in your back pocket.
Yeah.
And just finally, training-wise, what's your approach to training? Are you kind of into the data and the science, or are you much more on feel?
I'm not looking that much at my data, but I have a trainer who does it, and he's really into those things, to power and all those data stuff. So he's looking into it.
Got you. And have you got a favourite session that you love to do, or I guess not so much you enjoy, but you feel you respond really well to?
I do a lot of like 15 seconds or 30-30s.
Okay.
Like 30 seconds, like around 500, 600 watts.
Yeah.
And then 30 seconds recovery.
Yeah.
And then like 5 times, and then you have 3 sets of it. It's really hard, but I like it actually.
Yeah. That's good to throw some figures on it, because I think most people, people on Zwift talk about watts because they can see them and they use them. So to realise, some of the numbers you're doing, like 500 watts for 30 seconds, it's good going. Yeah. So sprint training, that's your strength. Mm-hmm. How does sprint training work for you? Do you practice lead outs and stuff with the team, or?
No, not really. I do a lot of motor pacing sessions with my mom.
Wow, really?
She's riding the motorbike.
Awesome.
And then I'm just sprinting next to her, or I try to pass her, and that's actually my sprint training.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, most people, you'd assume it would be the dad. That's cool.
Yeah, no, my dad is afraid to do it actually. Sorry, Dad. No, my mom loves it, and she's never braking in the corners. She's just going for it, and I trust her 100%.
Yeah.
So
amazing. What's next? What's the big target over, I guess, this year and longer term?
The Olympics in Tokyo. That's the biggest
goal.
Road? Track for sure. Yeah, no
Omnium.
road. Yeah. I'm trying to go for the Omnium and also Madison, of course.
Yep.
But for now, for the short term and nationals next week.
Yeah.
So I want to get the Belgian champion jersey again.
Yeah.
And then Europeans, it's in Holland. So it should suit me. And then we'll see.
Awesome. All right. Good luck and thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was nice to catch up with Jolien, actually, because again, my wife was a teammate of hers for a couple of years. Lovely girl. Super friendly. Always pleased to chat with people. So had a nice chat with her there. What do you take away from the chat I had with her there, guys?
Well, she's obviously had a very illustrious career and been very successful, but she also seems to be very humble in what she's achieved so far, which is a great example for lots of riders out there.
Well decorated, that's for sure. I mean, 29 national titles. Just shows how good she's been for how long she's been good too. It's ever since a kid all the way through. It's, already, even though she's still relatively young, how many years has she been winning for? It's fantastic. Yeah,
definitely. What I quite liked is the fact that when she was younger, she wasn't super serious. Cycling wasn't everything, and she referred to when she won the World in Cape Town in 2008. She would just ride down to the shops, get an ice cream, ride back with her friends, and she was just riding a bike. She wasn't training. Got chucked into the road race last minute, and in her words, just sprinted at the end and become world champion. I mean, there's some lessons in that story for some youngsters, I think, to not let cycling take over your life and be all consuming from too young an age.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest points that I took from her interview there, was just her enjoyment of the sport when she was a junior. I'm sure we've all seen many juniors that just get so caught up in the stress and the hype and the professionalism of their training and preparation, and it's too much when you're young. These up to 16, kids need to be playing a variety of sports, hand-eye coordination, aerobic fitness, all those sorts of things, just a range of sports, and then start to really specialise when you get to 16, 17 and above.
It's amazing, isn't it? No question, Kev. It 100% gives you that longevity in the discipline that you eventually choose too, because you're not burnt out in any way, shape, or form. And there's probably plenty of institutes around the world that have grabbed the talent that's, these talent ID camps that are very, very well known throughout the sporting community. But they grab them so young, they stick them on twice a day training schedules, and by the time they get to, maybe out of high school, heading into university or whatever, I mean, they've flagged their schooling. They think they're going to become world tour professionals or whatever, the highest level at whatever sport they choose. And they're actually sick of cycling or they're sick of the sport. It's like, what can you do when you just, have lost the love for it. You've still got to love the sport. Even when you're a professional at the highest level, you still actually fundamentally have to love the sport.
Yeah, and that's the next point there that Jolien mentioned too. Like, she's completed her education. She's been studying at university while she's been racing as well. So, I guess that's part of perhaps her late start in her preparation for cycling professionalism. She's had a light start where you'd say she's enjoyed it and not taken it as serious as other juniors have, and she's been able to complete her education along the way, and she's still there winning races now. So it's been certainly a great career for her.
Absolutely. And she talks about combining track racing and road racing at the highest level, and kind of segmenting her season up into distinct parts. And I think not every team would let you have that, be able to do that. But luckily, she's joined teams that have. And obviously, Greg, you competed on road and track, and obviously the demands very different, and it's obviously not easy to be world class at both. And obviously, you can run the risk then of sacrificing, or almost coming out with nothing. You kind of try and peak in both in the season and almost come out kind of substandard in both disciplines.
It's true. I mean, you can, when you prepare for a Worlds campaign on the track, it's very short, explosive work, powerful, but, it's only an hour maximum if you're doing the Madison, or it's not even that anymore. It's 50 minutes, isn't it? Yeah. And then all of a sudden you have to line back up on your next road race and it's 4.5, 5 hours. It definitely takes, again, a good 3 weeks before you actually get your aerobic base back again. So yeah, you run the risk. You're really lucky to have those understanding teams. But having said that, like I actually had more problems getting time off for world champs and things like that from the smaller teams in America than I did with T-Mobile and the big teams like HTC Columbia and Sky, because I think they saw the benefit, the big teams, and having a world champion on the team, and I was a very real candidate. If it was Olympic Games or a World Championships, I was a candidate for a medal, or a rainbow jersey or whatever. So they definitely saw the value in it that way. Whereas the smaller teams were like, "Oh, we're going to miss you for a month of racing that we know that you can win, X amount of races, and that's more important to them for their sponsors that I'm seen to be winning races for them." So you can understand both sides, and it's one of those situations.
Yeah. Which do you think is harder? Which way is harder to go, do you reckon, from the track onto the road or road onto the track in a season?
Oh, I think track to road. Yeah, it's just because it's the specialization in track, and you really do, when you're doing a lot of top end, you do compromise a lot of aerobic capacity. So when you then have to switch back over, your aerobic, you just have to really, really work on that aerobic capacity again. And that takes time, as we all know. So it's a good 3 weeks before you're at any kind of level again. So you just, as long as you know that, and you're going to throw yourself in the deep end, you're going to suffer like a thing that suffers a lot. I don't know.
Don't say it.
Yeah, you're going to suffer quite badly for a while. And then, but to be fair, I mean, you do come out with a lot of power, a lot of top end speed. My sprint was always fantastic at the final once I could get to the final again. So it's you do get a lot of benefits out of it, but unfortunately there's just not a lot of crossover from track to the endurance road. However, saying that, if you come into the track campaign with a big block of road racing in your legs, I mean, you can handle anything the track throws at you, and you can back up day after day. So it really is helpful to have a good road block in the legs before you hit the track training.
What about Jolene's other comment there about nature versus nurture? What's your opinion there, guys? Her comment was that you're either born a climber or you're born a sprinter, and you soon work out which one you are. Can you make yourself to be one or the other?
It's interesting, isn't it? And, like if you look at physiological aspect of it, you're gifted your muscle fiber types. And yes, you can change them. There's no question, but it's a great debate, isn't it? And, we could probably do a whole podcast on it, Kev, but it's I honestly believe you are gifted with that sprint ability, because what else comes with that is that lack of fear in a bunch sprint, or that innate ability to find the front in a bunch sprint. So it's not just your fast twitch fibers that you're given, you're also a little bit mad.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You've got to be a little bit mad.
Yeah, for sure you can improve in any area, but I do agree that nature does override nurture. You're soon going to work out what your strength is. It might take until you're under 23s or early senior years, but you soon work out what your strength is, and you train for your strength. That's the way we get eventually.
I agree, and I think with a few of the athletes I coach is the higher up in level you go, as in competition through the world, or if at a world tour level, at a lower level or at a younger level, you can almost be what we call jack of all, and be good at a lot of things. But the higher up, the more you have to specialize. You actually, if you want to have success at elite level, you've really got to train to your attributes, haven't you? And it's and this is the thing, I think people from New Zealand and Australia, they were cleaning up in New Zealand and Australia, and because they were good at everything, but then they think they can go to Europe and become and sort of stay that level of rider, whereas in Europe it's so much different because everyone specializes. There's so many really good climbers, there's so many really good sprinters, so you have to pick out in your early senior development, would you say, that you can actually find out, okay, this is actually what I'm good at, and then really concentrate and train that.
Yeah, I think to be world class, world class in any sport, you also need both. And I think a lot along the way, in some of the experiences you come across, falling into this nurture category, if you have a couple of bad crashes when you're young, that's going to impact your confidence and that type of stuff. And you may physically be a world class sprinter, but those experiences in life have knocked your confidence, and you will not be a world-class sprinter because you haven't got nurture's impacted you and knocked your head. So I think to be absolute world-class, you need both. You can be probably good on either, but ultimately I think the best in the world are born gifted and apply themselves, the right training, got the right head for it, and day in, day out, live the life of a pro athlete. I don't think there's any shortcuts for the top guys, is there?
No, definitely not.
No. And I think that's where a good coach comes in handy too, is like, because there's often, I've wanted to lose weight and try and climb. I've been guilty of it. I'm sure there's a lot of elite athletes out there been guilty of like, if I just lose a couple more, I can try and climb. It doesn't matter. I worked out myself. It was like, it doesn't matter how skinny or light I get, I'm not going to climb with these guys, So you put the 2 kilos or 3 kilos back on and stick to what you're good at. And that's putting it in the 311 and trying to break the chain, It's like, because I remember when I got down to 68, 69 kilos, I found it really difficult in the 53.11 for the sprint. And then I just had a look at myself and said, Hendy, what are you doing, mate? Like, you can't even push the 11 in the sprint, and you're still in gruppetto. So you wasted your time, mate. Go back and just sprint. And that's what you just
train your strengths.
Train to your strengths, absolutely.
Yeah. And just before we wrap up, at the start of my chat with Jolien, I kind of acknowledged that we're in the middle of a stage race, and she's taken time out of her evening to she could be after a massage, lying down, chilling out to do an interview. Obviously, rest is this is not something we want to delve into in detail. Just to give a nod to the role that rest plays for pro athletes, especially on a stage race. You and around the transfers and all that, and there's limited time to recover. Absolutely fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah, and the ironic part is that the more successful you are during the stage race, the less rest you have. You've got interviews, you've got media commitments. It can be quite hard to juggle.
I was just going to say the exact same thing. As like, the funny thing is when you win, whether you're a tour leader or you've won the stage in a sprint, the less time you're actually, podium, drug testing, interviews, press conference, and then you're the last person to turn up at the hotel, get a feed, get a massage. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah. Cool. Just a little nod as well to Jolien's mum for all the motor pacing she does. That's pretty cool to see.
That's awesome. That's good.
Yeah. So, Zwift session review then. We normally review a session that's in Zwift. However, Jolien kind of spoke about her one of her go-to sessions, her favourite sessions that she really feels brings her on and works for her. And it kind of relates to some of the stuff we talked about on the previous couple of podcasts, and some of the comments you spoke about, Kev, where certain types of riders respond well or better to certain types of efforts. And I think this session, this is a great example of that. What you're saying being true. So Jolien is a sprinter. That's her. So she's full of fast twitch fibers, very very powerful. And her go-to session that she feels really brings her on, that she mentioned, was either 15 on, 15 off, or 30 on, 30 off. So very, very short durations, on, off, And she gives some, quotes some numbers, 500-600 watts. She's doing 3 blocks of 5 efforts. So taking that as a session, just want to talk us through why that session works for her, Kev.
Yeah, well, this is a great example of someone that knows her strengths and trains to her strengths. So she knows that she's a sprinter, lots of fast twitch fibers, and those short efforts of 15 seconds or 30 seconds are the way that her muscles respond to the stimulus and adapt and get better. So she's obviously found that sweet spot there and put it in place quite well. We haven't got a session there, but it's the kind of session that it's all over the internet. It's on many platforms. It's on Zwift in multiple locations as well. So 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off, or 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. But I would just point out that this session actually becomes a VO2 session because it's constantly on and off, comes very high aerobic into VO2 realms. So it's actually not quite a sprint session. It's actually a VO2 session, which does work as well. So it does work for sprinters. So a good session for everyone to try.
It's a good one. And how long's it been around for? Like you can think of all these fancy terminologies that we have now, like, your blood lactate onset or your MAODs and all these crazy different, but good old fashioned 30-30s. I mean, I was doing it for years and years too. And I tell you why it's really good also, besides the aerobic and anaerobic adaptions that you get, it's very, very similar to your Madison times. Like if 30 seconds on is when you're in the race. Yeah. And then 30 seconds off is when you're at the top of the track recovering. So I used to do a ton of it with my Madison partner, Hayden Ralston. It would be 30 on, 30 off. It was just absolutely perfect training. It's great training for when you're practicing to take a lap on the field, 30 on, 30 off. And it just corresponds and it crosses over so perfectly to a Madison session.
Yeah, even road racing, circuit racing, the amount of times that you make 30-second efforts and it's longer than the sprint, it's a real horrible type of effort to make. But it's, if you look at your power profile in a race, you will be doing 30-second efforts very frequently. So ticking a lot of boxes there.
Because when I started to lead out Andre, I had to change my training from that sprint and power that I had. And I used to start calling myself a 30-second time trialist because I really had to have a flat line power curve for Andre so that he wouldn't load up with lactic acid when I opened the lead out, but then I wouldn't die in speed either. So it was really one of those efforts that I did so much training on was my 30 seconds. Okay, I didn't put out a ton of power. I might hit 1200 watts when I kicked, but I would only drop down to 1000 watts. So it was only a tiny little, and my speed would never drop off. It was just a little drop off in power. So it was probably, 1100 high thousands to 1100 watts for the 30 seconds at the end of the race that then enabled Greipel to step off a fast wheel, and that's why we were so successful for many years there.
There was actually a study done, and I can't reference the study off the top of my head here at the moment, but it's a study on the benefit that riders were getting in riding the Vuelta immediately before the World Championships. And the question was it the volume that was providing the benefit to the World Championship performance, or was it the intensity from the riding a Grand Tour? And what they found it was that during a Grand Tour, it's the thousands of those short 6-second, 10-second surges that the riders do in the bunch was providing the biggest stimulus, more than volume, that would increase the riders' form leading to World Championships. So that's why the riders that would pull out after the second rest day before the World Championships would come out of that 2-week block with really good form and generally have a good World Championship ride as well. So it's a good case of, in this 30 on, 30 off session we're talking about now, the benefit of doing surging type training and the benefits that can override volume in some ways.
Oh, I totally agree. And the stimulus and the adaptations that you have to go through, because you put your body for 30 seconds, you can produce a lot of power. And the stress that you put your body through and the adaptations that you have to make for that power is, it's like I said, it's such a simple session, but it's overlooked, because people try and get so scientific behind their training. And I mean, let's be honest, it's not rocket science training, like if you stress the body, your body has to adapt to it. And then you stress the body in a way that you respond to, like Jolien has pointed out to us. She really responds to 30-30s, and you pick that session that works really well for you. You're going to see massive improvements in your own performance.
Yeah, and if you look at the work done, so taking 30-30s and Jolien's 3 blocks of 5, that's 7.5 minutes, absolutely full whack. 500-600 watts for Jolien. That's but it's a lot of big workload, but also it's manageable in your head because you break it down into those small chunks.
Totally.
Yeah. get a lot of work done. That's the biggest battle sometimes. Is it's got to be achievable mentally. So it's all well and good, providing the most real structure, real challenging session. But if it's going to crack you mentally, then you're only going to do it once.
Correct.
All right. Well, there's Jolene's session. Feel free to give it a go out on the road, on Zwift, whatever you fancy. Obviously, it's easy enough to create a Zwift session in the Zwift session creator on your laptop or something. So give that a go. Next part, cycling terminology, guys. I'll leave it to you. I think you've got a term for me.
Yeah, we do, Matt. Okay. Greg, you got the timer ready for this one? 30 seconds for Matt.
Got the timer ready, brother. Here we go.
All right, Matt, we want you to explain to us fourth cat tattoo. Off you go.
Oh, this is a badge of shame. It's that oil mark on your calf, straight from your chainring or chain where you brushed your leg against your chain set whilst maybe getting on or off. Obviously, all it takes is a split second of contact between the skin and the chain, and that greasy oil mark stains bad. In the worst case scenario, oils on your socks, oily white socks, never good. And in the UK, a fourth cat is an entry-level cyclist.
Boom, boom. That's your time, brother.
Perfect. Okay, but leading on from that, I've got a question for both of you here. To avoid that, when you guys pull up at the lights or the stop sign, which foot do you unclip, left or right?
Just don't put any oil on your chain. just run a creaker.
Run a creak, yeah. Creak your knees. Left foot, I unclip.
Yeah. Greg?
Yeah, I'm a lefty too, actually. Yeah, I'm a lefty.
You're a lefty.
Yeah, because I think
I'm a right-handed.
You soon learn that you should be taking the left foot out, and there's a few reasons for that. Because generally, or in Australia, I'm thinking now, it's out of the traffic, so you're not sticking your leg out in traffic coming behind you. And also, if you're taking your right foot out, you are going to get that chain mark on your leg as well. So I guess the tip here is left foot out at the traffic lights.
Good point. What if then, Kev, you are French and you cycle in France?
I was trying to think of that in my head as I said that. Now I don't know how it works in France.
No, just take both feet out or something. Yeah, that's tricky. But yeah, the traffic, that's the rule. That's why I always took my left foot out. It's kind of, if you're going to fall, then you're going to fall out of the traffic. But the oil mark, I never thought about that. That's a good way to not get a fourth cat tattoo. Yeah.
It is.
Did you have in Australia and New Zealand? What's the ranking system? Because in the UK, elite, first, second, third, and fourth cat is kind of fourth cat's entry level. Similar with you guys?
No, we just go A, B, C, D grade.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, 4 levels, same as you. Yeah, I think what's it like in America, Greg?
Yeah, cats. You go pro, cat 1, 2. So that can be an actual whole race. So cat 2s can race with the pros, and then cat 3 is their own race, cat 4 is their own race.
Fairly similar then, four kind of levels throughout.
Yeah.
Lovely. Cool. All right. Quick fire question then. What is your favourite world on Zwift?
Richmond.
Watopia.
Ooh, a Richmond and a Watopia. I'm going to go for Watopia as well. Go on then. Why Richmond, Kev?
Well, Richmond, for me, it provides the perfect balance of some nice flat roads, some short steep climbs, and some long draggy sort of climbs. So it's got everything. Different road surface as well. Yeah, I like it. It's got everything.
Yeah, cool. Greg, what makes Watopia tickle your fancy?
Oh, I just love it. It's the variety, You're in one world almost, and then you're in another one, and then you're in the mountains, and then you're down by the wharf. I just like the variability. Yeah,
I'm the same. I like Watopia as well, and it's a particular loop, the big loop it's called. I like that for training. You can go up the epic KOM, giving you a good 25-minute or so climb. You then drop down to the jungle, go through a volcano. Again, it's 42 kilometers in length, so it's a good kind of distance, I think. It's like Goldilocks said, and the 3 bears. Not too short, not too long, but just right. And it's a good bit of elevation as well, 650 meters of elevation or something. So, yeah. What about the Tour Fire and Ice? You boys done that one? That's obviously the Up the Zwift.
Yeah, I love that. I have mine set on that just because I always like to get in my climbing miles. I don't know why. I just enjoy. I remember when you know how if you climb 50,000 meters, you get the Tron bike. So I was obviously pedaling ferociously for many months trying to get this friggin' Tron bike, and then I just sit going up and down these hills, which was fine. I was getting my training in. I think it might have been snowing at the time in Boulder, Colorado. But then I realized you actually had to join the challenge to get your bike. I was like, oh, no. And I thought it might cross over, I thought, oh, maybe the 20,000 I've done, it'll count. No.
That's caught so many people out that one, hasn't it?
Yeah. Make sure you join the challenge.
Yeah, make sure you join the challenge. Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, Q&A. We've got 2 questions this week. First question is from Fleur Suchebuk, and the question reads, I might need some pro advice here from you guys. I haven't been riding much lately. I've only done about 4,200 kilometers this year. The last climbing I done was in the beginning of March, and since December, I've gained a little bit of fat and a little bit of body weight, as we all do. I don't know what my current FTP is. And the question is, what should I focus on in the coming 4 weeks? Because Fleur's got a target in 4 weeks, which is L'Étape du Tour. Should I be focusing on more muscle power, losing weight, focus on low cadence? What is it that I should be doing? Greg, what do you make of that?
Yeah, well, g'day Fleur, and we'll see you over there at L'Étape. I'm looking forward to it. 4,200K. You've done a few more Ks than I have, so don't panic. No, I think, honestly, the key there is don't panic. You've got plenty of time. You've still got 4 weeks. I would really, really concentrate on a ride like this with so much climbing altitude meters. I would just really concentrate on that sustainable aerobic power, which is around 80% of your functional threshold power. So in the next week or so, I'd definitely have a crack at an FTP test. Nice indication of where you're at the moment, and then we can do a lot of work, a lot of hours at that 80% of that FTP. If you stay at this level on your climbs, if you know your numbers, if you know your power up these long climbs, you're not going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. You will make it through. As long as you hydrate correctly, as long as you eat correctly, you're not going to have a problem. Okay, you've got 4 weeks. It's definitely time to buckle down. I wouldn't worry about the body weight because that'll take care of itself once you start training. Dedicate yourself to the training now. A little tip for your ergo training for climbing when you're doing so much climbing is what I used to do was back in the old days, probably won't have them these days now, is the old telephone book. I used to put a couple of telephone books under the front wheel, and that would actually obviously simulate a climbing situation and engage those glute muscles a little bit more and engage your hamstrings a little bit more. So that's a trick. If you can raise that front wheel up a little bit, it really does help with your seated climbing. And we're going to be doing so much of it on this ride coming up. So it's just now about consistency. Spend some time at 80% of your threshold with that sustainable aerobic power, and chuck a block under the front wheel when you do your ergos now, and it's and simulate that climbing sensation, and you'll be fine, Fleur. And don't worry, you've got Matt there to look after you to tow you up the hills if you get in trouble.
Good man. And we're not putting something in a block or a book, anything under your front wheel. You can feel the difference straight away, and it hasn't got to be a massive book. No, I guess an inch and a half thick, 2 inches. It suddenly just transforms how you sat on the bike, and it just feels completely different, like you're riding up a hill. So,
it really does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. So just touching on the 80% of FTP, Greg. That's obviously you could do that for a long time. So what kind of length sessions? And is it literally jump on and you're suggesting 80% of FTP for duration of a session, hour and a half, 2 hours out on the road, or what kind of specifics are we talking?
Yep, so nice warm up, and then when I was on Sky, we just used to go out for 90 minutes and literally ride at 80% of our FTP for 90 minutes. Okay, that's a bit hard on the old head. So you can actually break it up into 30 minute blocks, and it's because it's actually a really achievable number. Like you start off and it's like, oh, this is okay, but once you get an hour and a half of that work done, you can really feel, you've then your glycogen depleted. You're you're starting to move into a different energy source then, because you've run your if you're not substituting with food during the ride, which we never used to do, where we would start low on low training food and then obviously only water during the effort. So the idea of the whole session was to deplete your own carbohydrate stores or your glycogen stores in your muscles and your liver and your blood. And roughly at about 80% of your FTP, you've got about 90 minutes of glycogen. So it was just to run your glycogen stores low. So you can take that into account too. But I often prescribe now because I know how hard it is mentally to just go out there and sit for 90 minutes at 80%. I just always just break it up. Try and break it up for 5 minutes even, and then just get back into it, and then another 5 minutes just to keep it mentally fresh.
Cool. Sounds good. And just the difference between 80% and say 90%, which is kind of more in the sweet spot zone. If we're going to chunk it up into blocks, what's the thinking of your 80% versus doing less work at an increased intensity at say 90%?
The reason we do it is to make sure it is an aerobic effort still. You want your primary substrate to be, well, it's going to be on par with your carbohydrate substrate. You're not going to, the higher you go, the more carbohydrates you're burning. And what we want to do in Le Tap is we want to tap into those stores that we have plenty of. Okay, of course, you can't just burn fat on its own. You're going to burn carbohydrate too, but you'll be refueling that as you eat and drink through the stage. But you also want to use and be able to tap into that substrate that we have an unlimited supply of, and that's our fat stores.
So if you're tight on time, you haven't got long till a super long day in the saddle, SAP, sustained aerobic power, 80% of FTP is your way to go. Nice one, Greg. Question 2 is from Henry Vatican. And the question was sent in via Facebook. So thank you, Henry. And also thank you, Fleur, for your question. But Henry's question reads, hello, my question is about altitude. I have an event coming up that takes in climbing near 3,000 meters altitude. I have access to an altitude chamber, so figure it's worth using. What would you recommend for my event at altitude? But also, are there benefits to using the chamber to improve my cycling when not at altitude?
Big question, this one. This is one that we could probably do an entire podcast on its own. But look at this one. There's kind of 2 parts to it. There's training at altitude, and then specifically training with the altitude chamber and the benefits that we can get from that. So I guess just to touch on quickly how we train at altitude and what we can expect. We know that when we train at altitude, the sort of sweet spot in terms of height is 2,000 to 3,000 meters. And when we train in a state of hypoxia, so with less oxygen, we're going to be forcing the body to produce more red blood cells, so more natural EPO. And that's the overall goal of training at altitude, and that's where the benefits come from. But with altitude training, there's so many differences that can happen between each athlete. So if we were to take a group of 20 riders to an altitude camp, everyone's going to respond in such a different way in terms of their initial adaptation, their fitness response to the training, and then also when they come back down to sea level, their time that they're going to experience their peak from the altitude training and how long that peak's going to last for as well. So with altitude training, there's so many unknowns, there's so much guesswork that it really is hard to put a good altitude camp in place and to get the benefits from it. But in this question here, we're looking specifically at using an altitude chamber. So this method here, so Henry's going to be putting in place what we call live low, train high. So he's living at sea level and training at altitude. The other methods, or actually the number 1 method, is actually to live high and train high. That's where you're living at altitude, you're living at Tenerife, Boulder, Colorado, and also training high as well. That's the number 1 benefit of altitude training. But in this case, we're looking here at live low, train high. Now, the question here is, are there benefits? The answer really is, I'm going to say it's no. And the reason is that it's not long enough at altitude to force the body to put it under enough stress and force it to change. Generally, with altitude, we need at least 12 hours a day for 7 to 10 days for that whole system of altitude benefits to kick in and to start to take effect. So for the money that people are going to spend, or you might be getting this for free or a lower price, but for your own personal benefit and input, what you're going to get out of it, I would say it's quite limited. And the other reason is that when we train with an altitude chamber, the training intensity is also reduced. So in my opinion, you're better off just going out and doing a good hard road session. To do, let's say at the most, if you were doing, let's say you were doing 4 1-hour sessions altitude chamber, that's 4 hours spread over 7 days. It's really not enough to cause any appropriate stress on the body to adapt. And then it also reduces the effectiveness of your training as well. So altitude training is quite good, but when you can stay high for a long period of time. The other option there is altitude tents. That's where we're living high and training low. So you're sleeping in the tent and training at sea level. There's benefit there because long periods of time in the tent sleeping there at night time, and you can do that for weeks on end. So there's benefits there. But when it comes to altitude chambers and the masks and so on, there really isn't much bang for your buck there.
It's a long subject, isn't it? I mean, there's been years and
Yeah.
years of research of altitude. But one thing I could say is, if you can get a blood test, if you are going to do it, and like, we're not saying don't do it, we're just giving our opinion. You know, it's like you can absolutely go ahead and do it. It's not going to harm you, but we're just giving our professional, experiences or advice. So what they have is these, they call them it's not a very scientific word, but it's adapters and non-adapters. But one of the actual keys to finding out a non-adapter is if you can check your hemoglobin levels before you go. If they are below 14 to 16 is the range in which we want to sit. If you're below then, don't even bother with altitude, because you're not going to have the right chemicals in your body, so to speak, to actually then produce this EPO and your erythropoietin response. So get that checked first. If you're below 14, and for females it's 12 to 14 is the range they want to be in. So if they're below 12, don't even bother going to altitude, because you're not going to get the adaptions at all. Nothing's going to happen to the changes in your blood. So just keep that in mind if you can get a blood test before you do the training. And like we said, that's Kev and I, that's a personal experience and the research that we've read. We're not saying don't go and don't do it. It's like, we just don't recommend. Bang for your buck, you're probably not going to get just an hour a day on a altitude chamber. You're not going to get the massive adaptions.
As a coach, I've tried everything. I'm sure as an athlete, Greg, you've tried everything as well, and you soon work out where you're going to get the benefits from. Altitude tent, yeah, you're going to try it. That's also topical as well. But definitely live high, train high works. Interestingly, riders that live high, train high, quite often drop down low to perform high intensity work during that training camp as well. Or I've even had riders in the past at altitude take oxygen supplementation to do the high intensity work at altitude as well, to get that high intensity in as well. So it does show the importance of getting the intensity in at the same time. But like Greg said, you really need to work out if you're a responder or not. And what Greg said there was really good advice.
It's funny. I used to have a blooming 100 kg oxygen tank beside me in my ergos in Boulder, because it was like, when I had to do my high intensity or my sprint training, you just couldn't put the power out at altitude. So you suck on some pure oxygen and, you instantly got 100 more watts on the top end of your sprint. Or if I was doing a VO2 max session, 40-20s, 30-30s, it was another 40 or 50 watts on my peak power. So it's amazing that when you suck on the oxygen, geez, you feel good.
Because they don't suit everybody, do they? Altitude camps don't suit everyone. Like if you're a GC guy, they're the best thing ever. For those guys to go to Tenerife for a month and live high, train high, because most of the racing is, tempo and threshold sort of racing, it's fine. But for the sprinters, it really affects their sprint power. It reduces it quite a lot. So it doesn't quite suit the sprinters. And we've said in previous podcasts, I would place value over indoor training, a block of indoor training over altitude any day. You'd almost guarantee everyone responds in indoor training. Altitude training, it's a lot of guesswork there.
Yep. No, it's true.
It's same theory, I guess, as fasted riding. No, you can't do top end intervals and efforts if you haven't got the energy there. So whether that's carbs or oxygen, you can't do it. And just to touch upon my personal experience of an oxygen tent, Danny came back with an oxygen tent one time. He's like, "Oh, we're going to start using this." And of course,
this is a family show, Matt. Come on.
I was in the oxygen tent. Nightmare.
Do you know? If it's two people in the altitude tent, that it halves the amount of oxygen. So instead of being at 9,000 feet, you're probably at 18,000 feet. You're at base camp, not too far to summit.
I was just trying to get up the next day and go to work, and I was just like hot as well, just sweating all night.
Altitude tents do work, but the risk is you get interrupted sleep, so your recovery ends up being quite poor. You're getting this benefit from altitude, but your recovery is really bad. Then your training suffers. So again, it really is a fine line. Altitude, anything that's not natural, it's not quite as good. Like you're better off going to a high location and doing your training there.
Yeah.
Once it's synthetic, not natural, it's hard to put in place.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point there about sleep, isn't it? I mean, you take him with one hand and give him away with the other. And everyone knows the importance of good quality sleep as a huge marginal gain. All right, well, chaps, Dr. Hendy, Kev, good to chat as always. And for our listeners out there, we are going to be active on the Zwift forum. So any thoughts, comments, extra questions you've got based off anything that's been said today, drop it there. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Thanks as always for listening. and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, mate. And yeah, we just cracked over 300,000 listeners, so 300,000 listeners can't be wrong. Jump on and have a listen to us and send us some feedback. We'd love to interact with you and send out a few answers to your questions.
Yeah, and also don't forget, we're coming up to Tour de France, so start thinking about your Tour de France questions and start getting those into us as well, and we'll do our best to answer them for you.
Right on.
Right on.
Right on.